Paula Guerrero was born on an undetermined date in 1993. Little is known about her early life, except that she gave birth to her first son, Ciro, around the age of 20. The father of Caro remains unknown, and their tumultuous relationship led to their separation. The child remained in Paula's care, although the father struggled to maintain a relationship, as Paula allegedly manipulated him and initially barred him from seeing their son. Paula rented a one-room apartment in the Parque Patricios neighborhood of Buenos Aires initially. Everything seemed to go well, but her neighbors later recalled her conflictive behavior. Paula worked at a restaurant in a tourist area, where she met a young man named Felipe Nicolas Durdo. They began dating and soon moved into a slightly larger apartment within the same building. However, their relationship was far from harmonious. The couple's shouting matches became a nearly daily occurrence. Paula eventually became pregnant, and although the arguments subsided briefly, the peace proved to be short-lived. The noise of objects crashing against the floor and walls, coupled with the shouting and apparent physical confrontations, became unbearable. The neighbors soon opted to call the police whenever they felt it necessary, fearing a tragedy was imminent. The disturbances during the night robbed many residents of their sleep, and they suspected Paula was the root of the problems due to her confrontational nature. She reacted poorly to any complaints, and some described her as a problematic mother who neglected both her eldest son and the unborn child. While a few people portrayed her as a kind girl within her home, the reality was far worse than anyone could imagine. Felipe often threatened to leave, prompting Paula to resort to various forms of emotional blackmail to prevent him from doing so. This created a vicious cycle that neither of them could escape. Felipe later recounted that during one of their arguments, when Paula was nearly 9 months pregnant, he again threatened to leave. In a desperate act, she pressed a knife against her own belly, asking him if he was sure he wanted to go. On Christmas Eve 2019, Paula and Felipe welcomed their beautiful baby boy, whom they named Milo Alexander Durdo Guerrero. However, the arrival of their child did not quell the disputes, and the neighborhood's calls to the police continued unabated. The residents' disdain for the couple was so evident that, in August 2021, they decided to move with Milo and Paula's eldest son, Ciro, to a nearby apartment in the same Parque Patricios neighborhood. At that time, Ciro was about 8 years old, spending time with both his mother and father's family. Their turbulent relationship was becoming increasingly hellish, and even little Milo began to suffer the consequences of his parents' arguments. Felipe later recounted a troubling incident when Milo was just 6 months old. In the midst of a tantrum, Paula threw the baby forcefully onto a sofa. Felipe panicked, knowing that Milo was still so small and could have easily been injured or fallen to the floor. Fortunately, this reckless act did not lead to any major consequences, and despite the ordeal, Felipe chose not to file a complaint against Paula on another occasion. While holding their son, a familiar argument erupted between the couple. Paula attempted to retrieve Felipe's cell phone from his pocket, apparently in search of evidence of infidelity. When she struggled to pull it out, she shoved him hard, causing him to fall to the ground with Milo in his arms. Despite Felipe's efforts to protect the baby during the fall, Milo sustained an impact to one of his cheekbones, resulting in an instantaneous hematoma. Between August and September 2021, the situation grew untenable, prompting Felipe to suggest a permanent separation. Unsurprisingly, this proposal was met with hostility from Paula, who began to exhibit unstable behavior that raised Felipe's concerns for her safety and that of their children. According to some accounts, she expressed that she didn't want to be alone with the children. Felipe responded that he would only remain in the home if she sought help from a mental health specialist. Other reports attributed the initiative to Paula herself. She received treatment at a hospital, where she was prescribed clonazepam, a medication used to reduce abnormal electrical activity in the brain, commonly employed to manage seizures, behavioral outbursts, and panic attacks. Initially, the medication appeared to stabilize her, but contrary to expectations, the underlying issues remained unresolved. By combining the medication with alcohol, Paula's condition deteriorated. On January 1, 2022, Felipe could no longer endure the turmoil and solemnly told Paula he wanted to separate, a notion she could not accept. As the separation loomed closer, Paula's response turned vengeful, beginning that very day. In a recorded incident, Paula was seen rolling on the floor, kicking everything in her path while claiming to be assaulted, even as Felipe, with their son in his arms, documented her erratic behavior. In a moment of distress, Paula leaned out of one of the apartment windows, screaming at the top of her lungs that Felipe was assaulting her. According to Felipe's account, after spending much of the day confined in the apartment, he called the authorities multiple times for assistance in leaving. The police arrived around 9 p.m., but before addressing Felipe's situation, they spoke with Paula, considering that such scenes often stemmed from domestic violence. Although Felipe was able to present his side of the story, Paula's account prevailed. Consequently, he was taken to the police station and detained for the next 24 hours. Upon his release, he was issued a restraining order that prohibited him from approaching Paula, who retained custody of Milo. This incident marked a definitive end to Felipe and Paula's relationship, yet little Milo remained caught in the middle. It is unclear whether Felipe had permission to visit Milo or if visits were arranged by mutual agreement, but he managed to see his son during this time, always under the supervision of a third party. Unfortunately, conditions only worsened. Residents of the building observed Paula's increasingly erratic behavior, as did shopkeepers who encountered her while purchasing supplies. One shopkeeper noted, "I could tell she was using drugs. When I asked her about it, she denied it, but it was evident. She was always screaming and crying, especially when the baby's father wasn't around." Another neighbor reported witnessing Paula daily taking bags filled with empty liquor bottles out of her home, exhibiting a vacant stare and the unmistakable smell of alcohol. One woman recounted that Paula would often leave Ciro and Milo in the common hallway of their apartment building while she went outside to smoke, chat on the phone, or shop. During these absences, she would remain outside for extended periods, leaving her children poorly dressed and barefoot, unsupervised and exposed to potential dangers. A grocery store owner in Park Patricius noted that it was evident Paula was unfit to care for her young children, often forgetting her shopping list and, at times, bringing home items that were clearly unsuitable for them. After Felipe left the apartment in early January, Paula embarked on an intense campaign of harassment, not only targeting her ex-partner but also his family and childhood friends. Alexis, Felipe's brother, became a frequent target as Paula persistently sought his help in convincing Felipe to return home. Accompanying her pleas were photos that purported to show injuries inflicted by Felipe, which were likely self-inflicted. When these messages failed to elicit the desired response, Paula altered her approach, threatening to take her own life and that of her son. Simultaneously, she requested money from Alexis, who offered to buy anything Milo needed and send it to her. However, Paula confessed that she wanted the money to purchase pills, which she later mixed with alcohol. As her strategy for soliciting funds faltered, Paula began sending distressing videos, including one in which little Milo, who had just turned 2, was seen crying inconsolably on the floor. Not only that, but Paula even sent alarming photos in which Milo appeared either asleep or unconscious, accompanied by the dramatic voice of his brother, Ciro, exclaiming, "Mom is dying." At the end of the video, Paula's voice, completely calm, can be heard saying, "That's it," followed by another phrase that was difficult to decipher. But media reports suggested she was implying, "Now with this, she is going to die." This video clearly revealed that it was a ruse intended to lure Felipe to see his son, possibly to provoke him into violating the restraining order, either to have him arrested or simply to cause him distress. Despite the manipulation, Milo's father reported to the police on Monday, January 10, 2022, expressing his fear for his son's safety, citing Paula's unstable mental state as a threat to the children. He provided the authorities with several videos and written messages that Paula had sent to him and others. The police took the complaint seriously and dispatched officials to Paula's residence to assess the situation. However, when the officers arrived, Paula appeared calm and behaved normally, and the children showed no signs of mistreatment or danger, leading to the dismissal of the complaint. Tragically, the situation would soon escalate. A few days later, on Thursday the 13th, amid a severe heat wave in Buenos Aires, authorities received another report from City Hall personnel at a bus station, alerting them to a woman with a child who appeared unwell and disoriented in the sweltering sun. Upon their arrival, officials discovered Paula and her young son nearly collapsed from the heat. Minutes later, a healthcare unit arrived and began attending to them. Likely prompted by information from Paula, the authorities were able to contact Felipe, who was living with his family on the outskirts of the city. He rushed to the scene, immediately informing the police that he could not approach Paula due to the restraining order in place. However, he saw that his son was being cared for by the staff, who provided Milo with something to drink and a small sandwich while they stabilized his mother. Both appeared quite disoriented, a fact that did not escape the worried father. This alarming incident marked a turning point for Felipe, who realized the grave danger Milo was in under his mother's care. The following day, Friday, January 14th, Felipe, accompanied by his family, went to the domestic violence office known as OBD, typically frequented by women facing domestic abuse. There, upon confirming the validity of his claims, the case was promptly referred to the appropriate judicial or administrative bodies. Felipe and his relatives presented all evidence they had gathered, recordings, photos, and texts that highlighted Paula Aylin's fragile mental state. Felipe's sister testified that he had long desired to end the tumultuous relationship with Milo's mother, describing her as violent. She recounted witnessing Felipe with numerous bruises and scratches on his body, noting that whenever he attempted to separate, Paula would fabricate illnesses in their child or conjure other crises to compel him to stay. According to Aylin, both Felipe and his son, Ciro, who was then between 8 and 9 years old, had suffered from Paula's violent outbursts. Felipe shared messages with his family that evidenced the danger Paula posed to their son. In one of them, Paula expressed her desperation, threatening to harm Milo if she lost custody. This prompted Felipe to request the temporary removal of Paula as his son's caregiver, assuring that he had a stable job and the unwavering support of his family to care for Milo. After conducting psychological evaluations for both Paula and the child, and corroborating the report at the OVD, Felipe was informed that a request would be sent to the court for him to be granted custody of Milo for a minimum of 90 days, given the rapid progression of the case. It was agreed that Paula could see her son the following Monday. However, for reasons that have yet to be clarified, Paula was notified about the complaint and the impending custody change. Upon learning this, she sent a message to Felipe, expressing that he had destroyed her. Felipe tried to reassure her, promising to continue supporting her financially, and that his brother would also send food to help her and her other child. He urged her not to succumb to dark thoughts, assuring her that everything would be okay. Despite his reassurances, Paula was filled with resentment, and those messages were just the beginning of a series of disturbing communications directed not only at Felipe but also at his family, especially Alexis, Milo's uncles, who lived in Puerto Madryn, about 1,300 km from Buenos Aires, and had been unable to travel due to health restrictions. Alexis, nicknamed Fail, received several alarming written messages and voice notes from Paula, in which she stated that before handing Milo over, she would take her own life and bring the child with her. Paula expressed regret for not having met Alexis in person and claimed that for 2 years she had endured terrible abuse from Felipe. Paula claimed that her ex-partner used drugs, insisting that their home would have been happy if not for his substance abuse. She sent videos where she used her son, possibly to manipulate her uncle, Fail, saying, "I would have loved to meet you, Uncle Fail, but, well, I just live another life." These messages were already known to the family, as Paula frequently attempted to manipulate Felipe into returning to her. Concerned for Milo's welfare, Alexis decided to show these recordings to the authorities, hoping they would take action. However, in Puerto Madryn, he was informed that they couldn't intervene because Paula was outside their jurisdiction. Felipe anxiously awaited Saturday morning, as per the visitation schedule, where he was supposed to see his son. Each meeting was supervised by Paula's aunt, Paula Guerrero, who maintained a cordial relationship with Felipe. On January 15th, Felipe contacted Gladys, asking her to pick up Milo at Paula's house and meet him at a park for some outdoor fun. Gladys readily agreed and prepared to go out. After noon, she arrived at Paula's home to fetch Milo. While the exact details of what transpired are unclear, it became evident that when Gladys entered and looked for Milo, she found him in his mother's bed, surrounded by pillows, cushions, and stuffed animals, completely covered with a blanket. Upon lifting the blanket, she was alarmed by the color of the child's skin. When she touched him, he felt cold. Without wasting any time, Gladys scooped Milo into her arms and hurried outside, where she encountered 2 police officers who recognized the urgency of the situation. They took her and the child to a nearby public hospital, where medical staff immediately began treatment. Sadly, they soon confirmed that Milo had died, estimating that the death had likely occurred several hours earlier. While police agencies responded to Paula's home. She was in the midst of a nervous breakdown and had superficial cuts on her arms, prompting her to be taken to a medical center, unaware of the tragedy that had unfolded. Meanwhile, Felipe anxiously awaited Gladys's call to inform him that she had Milo, hoping to arrange a meeting place. Instead, he received a devastating call from Gladys's husband, who told him that his son was in the hospital with no vital signs. Desperate, Felipe rushed to the hospital, but because of the restraining order against him, he was denied entry without permission from a family member of the mother. In the midst of the chaos, that permission was not granted, leaving the devastated father unable to see or identify his son's body. Through Gladys, Felipe learned how Milo had been found in Paula's bed. Initially, the doctors reported that the cause of death was cardiorespiratory arrest, though they could not immediately determine the underlying keys. Convinced that Paula had taken Milo's life and fearing she might flee, Felipe and his sister Aileen returned to the OVD. Overwhelmed with grief, Felipe struggled to articulate his thoughts, leaving it to Aileen to explain what had happened and why provisional custody of Milo had been granted to Felipe. With this information, the Criminal and Correctional Prosecutor's Office launched an investigation, ordering statements from the doctor who had attended to Milo upon his arrival at the hospital, as well as those who treated Paula at the other facility. The court ordered a search of the house where Paula and her children lived. Police officers confiscated 2 cell phones, an electronic tablet, and various items, including clothing, pillows, and cushions from Paula's bed. The case was classified as death by dubious cause. An arrest warrant for Paula was issued and formalized on Monday, when she was taken to a police station for questioning. In the following days, the judge requested the family court's file related to the case, as well as the order that had granted custody of the child to his father. This information was to be incorporated into the proceedings. Additionally, the magistrate sought reports from other courts regarding the cross-accusations that had arisen over time between Milo's parents. Family members of both Paula and Felipe were ordered to testify, as the incident occurred within the context of a legal custody dispute. While these legal proceedings unfolded, the Durto family worked tirelessly to keep the case in the public eye, ensuring it did not fade into obscurity. Accompanied by relatives, friends, and neighbors from the town of Elanu, where some of Felipe's family lived, they organized marches and rallies to demand justice for little Milo. The slogans were clear and powerful. During one rally, Alexis publicly shared some of the messages Paula had sent him in the days leading up to the tragedy, in which she desperately sought her medication, which had been administered to her in a controlled manner. Judge Maria Alejandra Proviola expressed her anguish during the proceedings, denying any involvement in the death of her husband. She denied having taken her son's life and admitted that on the night in question she had mixed the drug clonazepam with some wine from the fridge. She explained that she had been feeling increasingly anxious due to Felipe's erratic behavior in their relationship. Paula suggested that she may have accidentally smothered Milo with her body while he was sleeping, but she only realized it when she woke up to find him unresponsive. It is important to note that at that moment, Paula did not take any action to alert emergency services or seek help for her child. However, this explanation presented a significant problem. Toxicological tests performed on blood and urine samples later showed no traces of alcohol, drugs, or narcotics in her system. Additionally, during the inspection of the apartment she shared with her children, no pill bottles or wine containers were found to corroborate her clonate. Paula reported that Milo slept with her, and that she placed pillows against the wall to keep him warm. This claim, however, seemed illogical given that January in Argentina is summer, and the city of Buenos Aires was experiencing a severe heat wave, with temperatures exceeding 30 degrees Celsius. Following her arrest, Paula underwent psychological evaluations. One assessment concluded that she appeared calm, cooperative, and oriented to time and space, showing no signs of having suffered neurological damage due to drug use. Further evaluations conducted by specialists in psychiatry and psychology alongside a social worker, determined that Paula exhibited no signs of losing touch with reality and claimed she was not experiencing any sensory or perceptual distortions. Based on these findings, the experts concluded that at the time of her evaluation, she did not pose a risk to herself or others, and there was no necessity for her admission to a mental health facility. However, several striking elements emerged in Paula's psychological profile. It was determined that she exhibited signs of a personality disorder characterized by emotional superficiality and a tendency to view others as mere objects for her personal gain. The forensic analysis of Milo's body revealed that he had died from pulmonary congestion and hemorrhage, along with diffuse cerebral edema and abnormal accumulation of fluid in the brain. Furthermore, the report indicated that at the time of the initial examinations conducted at the hospital around 1:00 p.m. on Saturday, the boy had been deceased for approximately 10 hours. He also showed a 6 mm injury on the left side of his upper lip, along with bite marks on the inside of his right cheek. These injuries were considered to have occurred prior to his death. While Paula claimed in her statement that she attempted mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, the injuries were found to be incompatible with such an effort. Instead, they were likely inflicted before Milo's passing. Investigators concluded that Paula had taken her son's life in the early hours of January 15 through asphyxiation, possibly employing one of three methods: placing a pillow over his face, using her hands to cover his nose and mouth, or pressing Milo's head against the mattress until he ceased breathing. Included in the case file was a 3-minute video recorded by Felipe on a day when Paula and Milo were at a bus station after suffering from excessive sun exposure. In the video, Felipe can be heard asking Paula what she wanted, to which she responded that she did not want to be left alone with the baby. During their conversation, Felipe offered to give her more money and requested to spend weekends with Milo, but she refused. She insisted that Felipe return to live with her, and ultimately the case file recorded the decision to grant custody of Milo to his father. Paula was notified of this decision, and it was revealed that the formal accusation also included the testimony of a neighbor who stated that on the morning of the crime, she overheard Paula talking on the phone near the window. The neighbor recalled hearing Paula express her distress over losing custody of Milo and being accused of wanting to take his life. Paula allegedly told the person on the other end of the line that she would take both her own life and Milo's, stating that they would be in the same drawer. This last statement was deemed evidence that she had already taken her son's life by the time of that conversation. Based on this information, the judge ordered Paula's preventive custody, charging her with double aggravated homicide due to her relationship with the victim and the defenselessness of her son. The court set bail at 2,500,000 pesos, approximately $700 USD. In the rationale for her decision, the judge noted numerous indications that Paula might take her child's life, considering it a manifestation of revenge or an expression of her anger and frustration towards her ex-partner. Following the incident, Paula had inflicted superficial cuts on her arms, possibly in an attempt to simulate an accident or suicide. If found guilty of the charges, Paula faced a singular penalty, life imprisonment, which in Argentina entails a minimum of 35 years before eligibility for parole. Both the prosecutor's office and Felipe's legal team were advocating for this sentence. After the formal accusation, the prosecuting attorney elevated the case to trial, asserting that Paula suffocated her son as an act of revenge against the child's father. The prosecutor emphasized that previous messages sent by Paula were key pieces of evidence. In her brief, she included the conclusions from psychological evaluations of Paula, which, in addition to earlier findings, indicated that Paula exhibited a personality disorder characterized by low frustration tolerance when her demands were not met according to her desires. From that point onward, no new information emerged regarding the case, except that Paula's assigned defense attorney did not contest the decision to bring her to trial, expressing confidence that the proceedings would clarify the matter. The next significant update came in early July 2023. When it was reported that Paula had been prosecuted and convicted, receiving a sentence of only 3 years in prison. Yes, you read that correctly, just 3 years. Furthermore, she was granted early release the same day she left the courtroom, classified as someone with no outstanding legal issues. This decision surprised many, including an expert who deemed the sentence inexplicable. At that time, only the final ruling had been published, while the grounds for this decision were yet to be made public. The decision should have been made public in the days following the ruling. Immediately upon learning of this unusual conclusion, a new call was organized to protest the lack of justice for Milo. Demonstrators gathered outside the courthouse, seeking answers for what they deemed an absurd sentence. In a video, one protester lamented, "Unfortunately, a year after the sentence was issued, we still have not found any additional information regarding the case or the grounds for the decision. The only detail that emerged was that the case was in the hands of 3 male judges who considered Paula Guerrero a vulnerable woman." It is undoubtedly difficult to reconcile this story, which leaves us with a bitter taste and more questions than answers about the justice system's performance. Legal experts analyzed the case, noting the actions of the Domestic Violence Office, which granted custody of Milo to his father but did not act immediately. Analysts argued that had the complaint been filed by a woman against the father, the child would have been placed in the mother's custody that very day. The fact that Paula was notified of the custody decision in advance ultimately contributed to this tragic outcome. Perhaps the only certain conclusion from this misfortune is encapsulated in the words of Silvana Manrique, Milo's paternal aunt, during a press interview. "I can understand the problems a couple can have, but putting the children in the middle seems crazy to me, something only an insane person would do. The kids are not to blame for what their parents are like." We invite you to share your thoughts on this story. What do you think of the conclusion? Could it have been avoided? Dear audience, this is another investigation, and we would love to read your opinions on today's case, as your perspective is very important to us. Please remember to always express your views with the utmost respect for the victim and for other viewers, as well as for us who are reading your comments. Before you go, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video if you think someone you know might be interested. See you next time for another criminal investigation. Goodbye.